everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Golf Industry Podcast, a roundtable of all things business of golf, trends, topics, current affairs. And we're still, this is episode 3, so the trifecta. Thanks for hanging in there. 3 strikes and you're out. I guess, Rob, we've made it this far. So I'll kick it over to you to introduce our guests from the NCGOAs.
Very good. Well, with the NGCOA, we're excited. I wore my little maple leaf one today that I picked up in February, thanks to Jeff Calderwood, CEO of the NGCOA Canada. We also have Jay Karen from the NGCOA here in the States. Excited to have you guys on for a third. We started first podcast talking a little bit with golf course operations from a technology and a great GM out of Clifton, Virginia, Jason Paul. We shifted into the apparel side with a couple big brands last week and how they've shifted their focus. What they're doing. Yeah, their focus is basically to producing to help during some of the coronavirus situation right now. Now we want to talk to the NGCOA leadership for all of North America, basically. For those of you not familiar with the NGCOA, I'd just kind of like to turn it over to Jeff and Jay and let you guys talk a little bit about what your associations do, how you serve courses, how you serve golf course owners in particular, and support the industry that way.
Ladies first.
Oh, very funny. All right. Well, thanks for having us. First of all, looking forward to this conversation. From a Canadian perspective, I guess the elevator speech on who we are and what we do would boil down to this. We're a separate association in Canada, the same branding as Jay has in the States, but we work very, very closely together. So at the very highest level, there's the continent, Rob, coming together, the same mandate, leading the business of golf. Here inside of Canada, we're very active. We have the majority of the golf courses as members. We truly lead that business of golf, hold a very high standing in the eyes of all the golf course operators and the other allied associations. One point of differentiation in Canada that's unique compared to most golf associations in the world is that we've got a business model here that has been a big part of our success, where all the provinces, parallel to your states, all the provinces as well as our national are one integrated association, basically departmentalized. So we keep track of whatever needs to be done regionally, provincially, but one association, one board from the top, one set of bylaws, one CRM system, policies, procedures, one staff team, a lot of cross-pollination between staff positions around the country that combines regional and national. So structurally, that's a little bit unique. It's been very effective. And then what do we do to deliver on our leading the business of golf? I'd boil it down to a few categories. We do a lot of marketing just to try and drive more business to them. That's the revenue side of their solution. We do a lot of purchasing. We got a highly developed group purchasing program with a lot of participating suppliers, very high volume. So that's driving the expense side for the golf courses. We do a lot of educational content that's, very, very much identical really to what Jay does. Conferences, magazines, digital versions of the same, regional meetings. We do a lot of government advocacy. COVID is, part of this discussion today, I'm sure. Will be a great case study in that we've been highly involved, as has Jay. A lot of market research here in Canada. We do the rounds played reports. We do, monthly and by region and nationally. We do revenue tracker reports, various other, market research studies. And networking, I guess, would be the last one that I just summarized. We do a lot of events, which are at a bit of risk going forward, certainly this year where you can't get groups together, but it's a huge part of what we do, and we do it well, if I could say so. We're looking forward to come out the other end of this. So a lot of great networking value, and in many respects, that's one of the top things that members get out of it. It's just, if you have the majority of them on one page, as we do, what they exchange with each other is as useful as any other member benefit we deliver. So in a nutshell, that's it. We've been at it for 28 or 29 years, and I've been at it as the CEO from the beginning when, like I said before we started, had a different haircut, but learned a lot since then. And
you had a different hairline, not a different haircut.
Yeah, there we go. But lately, I've been trimming the sides myself because I can't do any other way. If this goes
Right.
much longer, I'm going to have a mullet at the back 'cause I can't see what's going on back there. So,
Business in the
That'll fit with
front, party in the back.
hockey haircut,
Yeah. You can just wear a helmet and a face mask all the time, and we'll see a little bit of hair coming out of the back, and we'll be good.
it's the hockey hair.
Yep. Very good. Jay?
Sure. So NGCOA has been around since the early 1970s, and we've been headquartered in Charleston since 1990, here in Charleston, South Carolina. We have a full-time staff, about 20 folks here in the office, and almost 4,000 courses around the country as members of the organization. And there are three primary things that we do in our strategic plan. I call it our ACES plan, ACE. Advocacy is number one, so a lot of public policy work in Washington. We help out and assist at the state level and local level where folks need our help. And that benefits the entire industry. I mean, we have our nonprofit exemption, tax exemption in the United States, so we can serve an entire sector, not just our dues paying members. And the advocacy portion of what we do really supports everyone, although we encourage everyone to join and support the cause, of course. But advocacy is a big one on public policy, as well as market influencers when the golf course operator needs advocacy, like the tee time market and the bartering of tee times and that whole universe. There is an advocacy angle to that we serve. Under C, we call commerce, is basically to Jeff's purchasing program, same thing, where we're facilitating commercial relationships with our members, whether it's Yamaha golf cars or Toro or Rainbird in Pepsi, getting deals to help on the P&L side of that business, getting them some discounts and rebates and so forth is always a good thing. And then E for education, which has, I think, been the crown jewel of what we do, as well as up in Canada. They do a fantastic job too. We publish Golf Business Magazine. We put on the Golf Business Conference, the multi-course owner and resort retreat. We have put on TechCon. Now we're doing a heck of a lot of Golf Business Live webinars. I thought the webinar was kind of a dead format, and then COVID happens, and all of a sudden everybody's flocking back to it. I thought podcasting was going to be the new love child here of association education, and then webinars are making their way back. And so we do something at least twice a week under the Golf Business Live branding. And then whatever other content, we have the Golf Business Podcast, and whatever the delivery is, we want to put good education out there for golf course operators. And one of the key benefits of joining is our Accelerate program, where if you're a member of the association, you're dialed into this online community platform where you can share ideas and solve problems with other owners and operators around the country. And the activity level, as you can imagine, has certainly spiked since the crisis of COVID-19, and people sharing ideas, and that's how they get information is from each other often, and we facilitate that through the Accelerate platform. So that's a bit of a nutshell of what we do, Rob.
Cool. Well, I guess let's just dive right into the whole COVID-19 issue here and how it switched things for courses. I know that we talked a little bit of this before we started recording the podcast. As far as courses in the United States, it looks like we've crested the 90% number. We do benefit from spring starting a little bit earlier here than it does with our partners in the north, especially the north of the north. So a little bit earlier season, but paired with just courses getting back open again. Where do you guys see things playing out? How's it working out with owners right now? How's it working out with courses? Government, how have you helped push on government with openings? When it comes to anything, when it comes to PPP type programs, anything like that may be provided, where have you guys been working with courses right now to help them kind of maintain and get through this so they can still look forward to a successful 2020?
Wow. You mind if I start, Jeff?
Go for it.
Okay. So when the crisis started hitting, the focus of our efforts at NGCOA in the US were simply on keeping golf open as much as we could where businesses were getting shut down. It was singular in focus as things were shutting down and the economic engine was turning off around the country. We knew early on that golf has a unique product that comports very well with what people need. And we saw that early on. And so we thought, well, let's advocate for safety, no question about it, but can we thread the needle and keep the golf operations open? So for several weeks, that was our focus, just keeping the business alive. While that was happening, then we've got federal legislation going on that looks like there was going to be a safety net for the small businesses in America. And the last time we went through this a financial crisis like this in America, the financial bailout was for the big, banking industry and in the automotive industry. There wasn't anything on the table for small businesses. This was all about, or at least mostly about small businesses. So we had to serve a role of interpreting what was going on and making sure that golf was not left out. So there was a lobbying effort going on directly in Washington to make sure golf was not left out of the safety net financial programs, because we have a history in America where golf is specifically excluded from disaster relief legislation. So that was a big deal for us, and we were able to preserve most of golf. Not every type of golf course was made eligible for some of the funding. But so then a lot of our team was focused on how do we help courses apply for this, get them information on how to do it and so forth. And then the third part of this was simply, how do you operate in this strange environment where governors are saying, no, you can't operate at all, but you can have some staff there. Well, what does that mean? How much staff? What can they do? All right, you can operate, but you can't operate the clubhouse. You can only do takeout. All right, well, how do we do that? And what's allowable here? Are we prohibited from doing events? Can we do tee times as normal, golf cars? All of that, we're just helping navigate. That's what a lot of our time has been spent on since the disaster relief legislation was finished. Was simply educating and trying to push best practices out there through the entire industry to try to operate as safely as possible, be a good citizen of your community. And, because we do have a privilege in the sense that we've got a product that works well right now. And so that's what we've been doing. And I'll comment a little bit later when we talk more about kind of down the road, what do we see, but that's
Sure.
how we've been responding to the issues.
Sure. And Jeff?
Somewhat similar, of course. A lot of that overlaps the border just with different governments, but the same basic issues have to be addressed. A few differences. It all arrived a little sooner, a little bigger in the States before Canada, so we maybe had that advantage of seeing the future before the future arrived. Happens a lot in Canada-US dynamics. It meant that we didn't have to reinvent, for example, the safety protocols right from ground zero. I mean, Jay and I right out of the gate, and Jay was great to say, take whatever we've got and build from there. That happened. We don't have the same status in terms of course openings and government mandates. What's legal here and there across the country isn't identical. I think you've got all 50 states open now, don't you, Jay?
As of Monday, just a couple days ago, yeah.
Yeah. So right now, in the last 2 weeks, we've gone from 1 out of 10 provinces open, which was British Columbia out west. They never closed. And they do have weather. Parts of BC have 12-month golf seasons just due to the warming effect out there. So we went from 1 province open roughly 2 weeks ago to 7 out of 10 are now open. So that's been a series of wins on our government advocacy, and that's all good. The catch to the 7 out of 10, though, is the 2 biggest, Ontario and Quebec, are still closed. So in terms of number of courses, and the third one is Nova Scotia. So out of those 3 provinces, in terms of number of courses, we're only about 40% of the courses that are open as of today, even though we've got 70% of the geography covered, so to speak.
Right.
However, we thought maybe today, and we're fairly certain that it's tomorrow, we will get the announcement in Ontario. We anticipate that we're going to open this Saturday, long weekend here, Victoria Day weekend it's called. And we think we'll probably get Quebec next week. So that'll check off the 2 biggest, and Nova Scotia will probably be in and around the same time. So we're very close to getting up and going. Some of the specific things that we've dealt with through that, just to build off Jay's remarks, a lot of the same stuff. We've done a great job on sending out bulletins. I signed that really early to our communications department to research every step of the thing, from the health part to the government regulation part to the safety protocols part, which all those are a little bit moving targets and they vary from province to province. And it was moving fast. It's settling into a rhythm now, but it was moving fast. So we had 2 people basically full-time just researching that and corresponding with the CFIB, the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses, parallel to your counterparts in the States, and they're pretty good leaders on the small business side here as well. Pull all together, interpret it through a golf lens, a golf operator's lens, and push it out. And there's a different one for every province. And at the beginning, they were going every day with new updates. And we're close to 200 of those unique bulletins sent out since it started, within 8 weeks. So that's been a big action for us and highly, highly appreciated. Signage templates, consultations, we're getting over 100 courses. For a small country, that's a lot of inbound calls a day, 100 a day. Again, mostly provincially, and we've got feet on the street in every province. A lot of that consultation, so much so it's actually almost the risk of being counterproductive. There's some courses just call us every day. They don't wait to read it anywhere else, and it starts to consume a lot of our time. But it's a good problem to have. We did an outreach program. I had them phone every single member. We've got 1,300 and some odd courses as NGCOA Canada members here. Phone every single one of them. It's not an email. You can back it up with an email if you want. Sometimes it's a voicemail, but make it clear on the voicemail, we'd like you to call us back, and it's a one-on-one. What can we do for you? Are you seeing all that we send out? Can we clarify anything that's unique to you that we can do for you? That's been highly successful. And we put together some supplier programs, special offers that are sort of COVID related. So it's things like credit card processing tap amounts being raised. So, higher limits, certain disinfectant products, things of that nature. So we've been busy. Oh, and webinars, Jay mentioned the resurgence of webinars. We've been doing those very, very successfully. So, to interpret the government programs for small business, for example, we get KPMG in there, and we get enormous attendance for those. And we did an HR one. And as the provinces are ready to open, because, Jay would know better than I, there's a lot of preparation, a lot of things you better anticipate because it's going to come at you fast. And the courses are swamped, right? When they open, they're just booming. And you better be ready. And you're going to have health inspectors checking it out. You're going to have bylaw officers on the 2 per cart or 1 per cart checking. We've got them checking driver's licenses at spots where a golf cart crosses a road within the golf course, and are your 2 driver's licenses from the same address if you're sitting together, stuff like that. So how to be ready. So we've applied these webinars to the day or 2 or 3 days before they're ready to open, once they get the word on when that is, and bring in some other golf courses that are already open, other parts of the country, so they can share their best practices, because there's lessons learned. And although they aren't all the same across the province, it goes a long way towards preparing. And when I say they're not all the same, we've been trying to get some consistency there. I'd be interested, Jay, in how you've handled that. I don't think you and I have talked about it, but with separate legislation and separate timing, and even just separate cultures across vast geography like we have in these 2 countries, you're at risk that if there's inconsistency and you get borders. Right now, they're not allowed to cross borders from one province to another, but that's going to change soon. And what happens if the protocols aren't identical from one to the other? So we're trying to pull everybody together. I think we're doing a reasonably good job of it. And I don't know that there's too much we would do different under the circumstances. I think we're being quite successful. Jay, how do you handle that particular point there before we go on?
I think, the way we've handled it so far is going to have an end life to it soon. But I think there's going to be a time when there'll be, a standardized probably guide or playbook on operating healthy in this new normal. That's assuming that there's no vaccine. If there's a vaccine to all this, a lot of this is probably going to go, a lot of it will go away. Some of this will stick around, because who knows when the next pandemic or next virus may come, and there's going to be this fear that lives for a while. But once there's a vaccine, I think that a lot of this is going to possibly go away, at least the heightened aspect of it. But what we did, Jeff, was and when I say we, the golf industry in the US, because we came together with the other associations to do this particular project. It was led by the PGA of America. It's called Back to Golf. And we took the White House's plan for opening the economy. It's a 3-phase plan based on social distancing and how restrictive we are in a particular area. But like phase 1 is no gatherings of more than 10 people. Phase 2, no more than 50 people, and various restrictions. Very generic. And like you said, we took the golf lens to that, but we tapped the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We said, look, and this is, again, the PGA led this, but we were all, figuring out and editing and drafting all of this together. Almost like, hey, CDC, if you were to operate a golf course, how would you do it in phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3? What are the precautions you would put in place in the operations? And we were able to synthesize that and come out with this playbook. Now, there's caveats or disclaimers in here that this is not meant to be public policy, because public policy, as you said, Jeff, varies state to state, county to county. You know, can you ride in the same car with someone that you came with versus no? You know, New Jersey right now still has like 16-minute intervals on tee times and only 2 per tee time unless they're family members. That's not the case in a neighboring state, right? So the disclaimer is follow the law. Whatever the law is, you got to follow the law. You know, none of this, because you know, phase one may have a provision that is not as strict as it may be happening in your state. And we're not saying follow phase one and are back to golf, not state law. It's not what we're suggesting. So it's really meant to be a bit of a flexible playbook for golf course operators to take a look at this and implement this at your facility and you know, manage around some of this as you have to based on your local regulations and enforcement situation. So that's our best attempt out there, Jeff. As you know, running an association, you can't mandate any course to do anything. And so you just do your best to put, you know, your best possible content out there for them to consume. And hopefully you've given them a great tool to work with to run their own business, but we're not in a policing or enforcement kind of situation for any of this stuff.
That's another good example of, you know, we can take advantage of a little bit of looking into the future. You're further down that path than we are. We're having exactly the same conversations. Can we crystallize a consistency across the country? Yes or no? And we feel pretty comfortable. And we haven't answered the question yet. And then working with the allied associations, each of the Canadian counterparts to the ones you just mentioned. But we get into we start from the position we think we've done a really good job provincially. We've got consistency within the province, and that in itself is a whole mandate. How do you get the golf courses fully aware to adhere to that? You better, or you might get shut down or fined, and you might shut down our whole industry. So that's another step in the process. But we think we're pretty good on a one province by province basis. But because they're not all the same, so you have one province. I think we only have one province now that has a government mandated tee time interval. They're trying to sort of impose the distancing by defining a tee time interval. It's now at 12 minutes. It was at 20 minutes when they first came up with it, which was not in our recommendations. They just thought they were being safe. At one time, we had 3 provinces at 20 minutes. The rest of them, no minutes. It's based on distancing. Now we have one at 12 minutes, and the rest aren't. So how do you adhere to those variances? So we couldn't write up that document and say our position is that there should be one or the other. We're trying to sort that out. So it's an interest. It's a reminder about the complexities of this issue. And as you said, Jay, the complexities of managing an association, because on lots of other issues, you've got similar variances and preferences. And, you know, we have to find the common denominators or rise above it all on any issue and try and lead. And sometimes you're leading from behind nationally when it's a provincial, you know, health issues here are all provincially mandated government decisions. Sometimes you lead from behind. And sometimes you lead from in front. It never gets boring, right, buddy? There's not a day where you got to do that's a challenge.
You know, one of the things that we've seen guys through a variety of ways. I've seen it personally. My club tee times are just like usual at this point now here in San Diego. They're 9 minutes apart. I've seen pace of play get a whole lot better with single rider carts and a lot of people walking. I've not played an 18-hole round yet that's lasted longer than about 3 hours and 50 minutes, which is kind of nice, especially with tee times only 9 minutes apart. Social distancing's been easy because the holes are 400 yards apart, and it's pretty easy to stay more than 6 feet apart from the guys you're playing with. So that's been easy. But a lot of the courses we've talked to, Jason Paul, we had on in episode 1, right outside the Washington, D.C. area. They're booked in advance, 2 weeks right now, sold out. Demand is super high. Talked to David Robinson from the Windmill Group in Alberta yesterday. Their demand is through the roof. They're selling golf like crazy. I'm sure we're hearing a lot of the same things. So kind of where that would lead me now, with demand up like this, people at home with potentially a little bit more time on their hands. They're not dealing with commutes to work. The daylight savings time is kicked in. It's easy to get out at 4:30 and get at least 13, 14, 15 holes of golf in before you run out of daylight, at least at this point. With people with that time, are golf courses, from what you've seen, starting to get to a point where they're able to compensate a little bit for any lost revenue at the beginning of the season because demand is so high? Or did this all kind of hit at the right time that the vast majority of courses hadn't really even come into season yet, so it's not a lot of financial damage. And what are you guys going to be able to do? What are you advocating to these courses to maintain this demand and make sure we can get through 2020 in a pretty successful way?
Well, in the States, when this hit, it depends on where you are. As you know, in Canada, like in this, but in the States, we probably have even more diverse geography as far as seasonalities and markets and so forth. So you pick a time of year, any time of year, it's a high season for some and low season for others. Just pick a month, right? And it's some markets high season. So there are some markets that took a beating, like Myrtle Beach. The month of April is high, their highest month for tourism season. Well, everybody stopped traveling. And so, you can't make up for that. There was a lot of local players that came out and played, and they were probably over the moon that they could play the courses in their market in April, when they usually can't because it's filled with tourists. So, but I think when we're talking about, the increase in demand and increase in play, can it make up for some of the loss in these other areas of the business? I would say, the answer is going to be, it depends, obviously. You've got a lot of golf courses that do events, weddings, and all that. That's a big part of their business. And when that's shut down, you can't make that up in tee times, right? The $10,000-$20,000 check to reserve the clubhouse and to have that wedding, plus the food and beverage on top of that, you can't make up for that on the tee sheet. The saving grace, from my perspective, is that the tee sheet is the high margin sale. Right. So if we are seeing an uptick in any part of the business, thankfully it's the tee sheet, because that's, the variable cost. You don't have the variable cost like you do with the food and beverage. Right. So the bottom line of the business, maybe, the increase in demand is the saving grace right now. And I think what we're seeing is existing golfers, they play more when the weather gets better. And we've actually, in the States, we've had some really good weather this spring. And so they're playing more themselves because of the COVID-19. So the person who may play once a week this time of year may now be playing twice a week because, that the effect of COVID-19. In addition to these new faces that are showing up, people bringing their spouses, their kids, because there's nothing else to do when the beaches are shut down and some of the state parks are shut down and the golf courses are open. All of a sudden, you're getting these tire kickers and saying, "Oh, let me check this out." So I think we're beneficiaries of this right now. And I think a greater question for us as an industry is, are we going to squander this, or are we going to embrace what we're getting and turn these folks into longtime customers and more frequent players? I think I have reason to believe that there's a better chance at doing that right now than maybe in the past. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about what percentage of your business is the tee sheet revenue. If that's only 40% of your business and the other is dried up, you can't make up for that on the tee sheet. If 80% of your income comes from the tee sheet, then hopefully you've got enough coming in to keep you going through this difficult time.
Yeah. Without repeating any of that, because I think those thoughts apply fairly universally, Jay, and I agree with all that. I would add a couple other layers. There's a difference in the private club market with several segments, right? The resort side is in deep trouble because nobody can travel. The private club side is got such an advantage, and many of them up here, by having a delayed opening, they're actually going to be perhaps more profitable at the end of the year. They got their revenues in anyway, and their expenses they could be deferred or reduced. So there's a little bit of not one size fits all on the answers to these questions. I think another angle I would add to Jay's remarks, maybe I'm just the eternal optimist, but I do tend to look at it all glass half full. I think there are some silver linings in there. And to Jay's point, if we're able to go leverage the opportunities, there may be some good to come out. There's definitely going to be some pain, so not to dismiss that, but some good as well. I think the trend towards, prepaying online, put those as two separate things, perhaps, pulling people forward. I think that's a pattern that golf courses have a chance to really ramp up and stick with after this issue goes away. I think pulling forward other technology-based solutions, Gallus is a great example. I think we probably moved several years into the future on the natural path that apps and so on were serving. And we've got such a slow moving industry traditionally. Actually, Rob, you and I have had great conversations about your thoughts that Canada, for why is it that Canada seemed to be adopting that technology quicker than other countries, but yet it was too slow. And now I'm guessing that'd be the same in the States right now, Jay, but we're seeing courses really leverage that. So there's a silver lining in there. I think, Rob, you mentioned pace of play. Maybe there's a way that we can keep that going, because right now pace of play is getting people's minds into a different spot for their expectations. I think that's a potential silver lining. I think the rate, sustainability of rates, because everybody's able to charge during the high demand, full rates, sometimes premium rates, far less discounting, probably fewer rates, although I'm a big fan of dynamic pricing. If you are able to just raise the bar on all of it, some of your dynamic layers sort of go away. Can we sustain that and leverage it as an opportunity? But customers are willing to pay it. They're proving it. If they see that the courses are busy now, has a lot to do with, can we keep the demand high when the rest of the economy opens up? Right now, we don't have very much competition for these disposable dollars. But I see it as an opportunity. And closely aligned with the rates, this one really excites me. And Jay, you may have more experience with it than we do in Canada, but I like the concept of selling a tee time instead of selling a green fee times 4. And courses up here are gravitating to that because of the demand. You buy the 4, and if only 3 of you want to show up, whatever, you bought a time, and they can only do it when the demand is high. So there's maybe later in the day they can't sustain it and they default to the old system. But there's enough of that going on, which is really increasing the average rate per round and going a long way to overcoming the gap that they're trying to play catch up on, or the lost F&B issues that Jay mentioned. So I think that's a cool opportunity. And this one's kind of ironic, but it's not that long ago we're all fussing over labor shortage. Well, that's gone away. There's a silver lining. Employment rates being so high, I think that can help in some regards.
So you're the guy. So what you're saying is, like, to be able to buy out a foursome, you're the guy that wants to buy out the row in the airplane so nobody's sitting next to you, right? Is that...
Hey, would we really care? The pace of play would further speed up if everybody bought a foursome and just played by themselves.
That's true.
That's such a smart idea, because I'm the guy who's sitting in my seat because I got on early, and I'm watching the people come on. I'm saying, please not him. Please not him. Don't let him sit next to me as everybody walks in the plane. So that's good.
I want to follow up on one thing about I agree with Jeff that this is pushing people to pay online and pay in advance, which we all kind of wanted to happen. And we were wondering, why is it taking so long for the golf industry to adopt some of these practices that are status quo in other industries and in the travel industry and so forth? Is that you also got to be careful and watch your expenses on this, because in the credit card business, like right now, a lot of golfers like to pay cash, or they'll show up and they'll swipe the card or insert the chip in person, and that yields a lower credit card rate on in your statement. When it's prepaid and it's not in person, the rates tend to go up for those. And so if we have more people gravitating towards credit card purchase and not in-person swiping or chipping, then golf course operators just need to be aware and be ready for the fact that their credit card the merchant processing part of their P&L, it will just increase commensurately with those increases in credit card usage. So just be prepared for that as people are budgeting and looking at how this is all going to play out. It's a good thing overall in getting people, so you're not having to deal with that at the counter. And maybe it actually kind of does away with some of the no-show situations too. You prepay in advance, it's done. Right. So it may solve some problems that have been lingering in the industry, but just look, pay attention to the cost of goods sold on some of this stuff too.
We're also seeing the database collection go through the roof. The month of April, it's not uncommon to hear a golf course say, I got 3,000 additional, database clean names in there. That's maybe on the high end when you say not unusual, but it's, again, any of the technology delivered solutions to your golf experience is really fast forwarding that as well. And Jay, this one's close to your heart. I think this is a potential, at least short-term solution, and maybe it can be sustained for some weaning off the third-party reseller thing, because they require demand to be weak for them to accomplish all that they do. When demand is weak, perhaps they fill an important need. So I'm not trying to be judgmental here, but a golf course would prefer a higher rate, would prefer to be totally in control and have them book directly with them. And the current demand situation is really aiming it in that direction. Again, you're maybe conditioning the customer to go directly to you, and the rates show it as well. And a lot of the third party stuff's built on sort of the travel component, where they maybe have an advantage to bring you a customer that you're not marketing to locally or you can't afford to reach on your own. That's somewhat gone to the background now and is being filled in with a lot more local play. Less reliance, therefore, on the third-party reseller. Maybe another silver lining in there that could stick.
Even I think when it comes to your point there, Jeff, even when it comes to rate integrity on those third-party resellers and the damage that it was, potentially doing to rate integrity for these golf courses by, those traded tee times selling for such a low rate, there's an opportunity for third-party resellers here now with demand higher to not only gain more money for themselves by being able to sell the tee times that they have at a higher rate, but it actually could help the golf courses out on the rate integrity side a little bit here, because they would be selling them at closer to what a course's rack rate would be.
Yeah. Don't get me started. No, just kidding. All right, so someone was asking recently.
I'll get a phone call 15 minutes after the podcast again. So yeah.
What's that, Kyle?
I said, it sounds like we know what episode 4 or 5's topic.
Somebody's going to invite themselves to the podcast. Yeah.
It's going to be a series just on this. No, but someone asked me recently, is this a game changer for the relationship with the third parties? And you make a good point that when demand's high, it might lift those bartered prices. There may not be a need to sell it for 80% off. But
right.
My observations, though, is that the folks that are in revenue management there oftentimes have really screwed that up for golf courses. I remember there a few years back, there was a weather break in Chicago. It was like March. Weather's terrible for golfing in Chicago in March. All of a sudden, there was 1 week where the forecast was excellent. It was going to be like high in the 60s, or an excellent golf week, unexpected. And Golf Now pushes out this promotion of get your hot deal now. You're 80% off. Like, wait a second. If there's any time to not sell golf at 80% off, it's when you've got a bunch of pent-up Chicagoans wanting to play golf, and there's 1 week to do it for the next 2 months in their windshield. Don't do that. So I don't have faith that the third parties will see that as an opportunity to raise the lowest rates. But I think a more important variable that the pandemic is yielding for these relationships is the direct relationship with your customer. Because now you have an environment of golf courses where you don't know what the rules may be at this golf course versus that golf course. What safety measures is this course taking versus that course? And you want to know directly from the golf course what's going on and to communicate directly with them. And the golf course, by all means, wants to communicate with you before you get there, so you know what the limitations are, the guidelines, the rules. If you have a third party that stands between the customer and the golf course, I've seen it in the travel industry. I worked in the travel industry for 10 years. When there's a third party in between, a lot can happen. A lot of misinformation or bad information or lack of information in what the experience is going to be like at the facility. And so you don't want to rely on a third party to communicate to your guests, all right, guys, this is the rules as far as the golf cars. This is, hey, we're not going to have any food and beverage going on between these hours for whatever reason. You don't want to rely on a Golf Now or a Tee Off to necessarily communicate that for you effectively, especially if it's changing frequently. So to me, I'm thinking that the more practical reason to build a stronger, right now, as far as the context of the pandemic, the more practical and more important reason to rely on yourself to sell and market and communicate with your golfer is because there's just so much the golfer needs to know right now.
Yep. Comfort can absolutely build loyalty.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, guys, go, Kyle. Yeah, please.
Let me chip in here real quick. I know you both mentioned an important part of your mission is to, facilitate interaction amongst your members, whether it's your annual national meeting, regional networking opportunities, et cetera. This is obviously going to throw a little kink in the works. What does, if you can, forecast the rest of the year? What does this look like for your regional meetings? I know your national meetings are probably not till January, February. Is it too early to kind of think about what that looks like?
Well, it's a pain point, Kyle, for sure. I think for a lot of associations, it's not unique to golf. the whole conference business and just the meeting business generally is got to work through this. We've had 17 canceled events so far. We have a fairly busy agenda of events, and some of them are quite costly. Some of them were in the last 2 weeks of March, 4 of them. The 4 biggest of those 17 were in the last 2 weeks of March, which is right when it hit here, and government said shut it down if you got more than whatever it was at the time, maybe 100 people or 50. Going forward, our annual conference, parallel to Jay's, our Canadian one, is in November. So that's not very far away. We got to make decisions really soon on it. It's not looking great. I think we're going to be heading probably to a virtual event. We may do a virtual thing combined with some regional in-person that doesn't require airplanes and hotels, sort of 1 day regional combined with overreaching several day of content digitally delivered. But we haven't yet determined that. That's highly likely. So, we have to reinvent ourselves, at least in the short term on that. I'm a big believer that nothing beats the face-to-face, that networking value. It's not that hard to deliver a speaker and a message content, digitally. In many ways, it's more advantageous. You can maybe pick your own time if it's not necessarily always live, and you can reach thousands of people instead of 1,000 people, whatever the math might be. But you do lose some of that networking value, and that applies equally to the supplier's role in conferences. They have a hard time getting the same value through the digital solution. So I think it's going to really test our innovation. I'm quite confident we're going to get there. And then we'll have to make up for any shortfalls through other new solutions, maybe new services, if we have to accept a little smaller bottom line on traditional events in short term or long term. Could be permanent. We don't know yet. But again, I'm confident in that. And even just seeing how we got through this crisis here, the things we discussed at the start of the call, our approval rating with our members here in Canada, we aren't actually measuring it, but anecdotally, you can hear it in so many directions. It's probably never been higher, the way we've addressed this. And we're actually getting this is a time of year where we normally don't get hardly any new members joining. We're not even out there marketing it right now because it's a weak time of year for that. There's other times when we focus on it. We're getting lots of them calling us just because they're seeing, and we opened up the doors. We deliver, as Jay said, advocacy and sort of industry-wide things like this. You push it out beyond your membership on certain things, so they're exposed to it. So, that's an example. I think our membership's taken an uptick as a result of a bad situation that was managed well. It's a bit of a new opportunity for us. We'll need new opportunities to overcome some short terms financially on certain other projects. So it's complicated, but I'm confident we're going to solve it.
Yeah, so a similar situation here in that, if you equate it to what's happening in the golf course business, if a golf course was told, hey, listen, for the next 8 months, your food and beverage, your clubhouse is shut down. As any small operator is going to do, they're going to figure out how to survive. They're just going to, the necessity of survival and paying their staff and keeping things going. They're going to figure out, well, what can we do to deliver value and to maybe feed our folks in a different way? And Jeff and I, as association executives, we're a similar breed in that we're going to figure it out. So if we can't have meetings for several months in the old-fashioned traditional way, then we'll figure out, we'll ask our sponsors and our members, what do you want? How can we deliver some value in new and interesting ways? So it'll challenge our legacy business models. I mean, when you're in the association business, you're in the meeting business. That's just, that's what it's been for years. And we've noticed in the arc over the last 25 years in the association world, this with the advent of the internet and the information age, like, why do I need to go to conferences? And why do I need to do things the old-fashioned way when I have information at my fingertips? And it's really challenged associations to be valuable and to try to be ahead of Google and as far as our utility to someone looking for information, right? And so this is accelerating that right now when you're being told you can't meet. All right, so now the innovative engine has got to rev up right now. And for us, we have an event on the books September 29th and October 1st. It's called RevCon in Las Vegas, and it was all about revenue management, and it was kind of an evolution of TechCon that we had the prior 2 years, and that's it's in question right now if we're going to be able to do it in person or not. And it's I'm concerned we're not going to be able to, and we're going to have to make a decision soon on that. And do we deliver events? Do we deliver it digitally? Okay, we'll figure that out. we have every July a retreat for multi-course operators, 6 or more golf courses in your portfolio. You get invited to this retreat. We've been doing it for 27 years, and we've moved it to December here in Charleston. So the weather, thankfully, is still good here in Charleston in December, and so we've postponed that. So we'll still have that going on. And then we moved our golf business conference to the PGA Merchandise Show at the end of January each year for the next 4 years. So as long as the merchandise show is happening, we plan on having our conference. And I guess if the merchandise show for some reason doesn't happen, and there's no reason right now to think it won't, I guess we'll have to figure that out, because as associations, we're obligated to have annual meetings in our bylaws. We have to have these meetings of the membership in person. And so, we'll have to figure that out. But right now we're looking at the next 4 months and then the subsequent 8 months and trying to come up with plan A, B, and C for every scenario.
Right.
Yeah.
Two quick things I just thought of. One is that Jay and I play for the Can-Am Cup, a high stakes golf event every few, I don't know, when was the last one? In Chicago, you and I were there, you kicked my butt. So he owns it right now. I think we've been generally even over the years, and he's a better golfer than I am, so I tease him when we are even. And we'll carry on this conversation, Jay, sometime soon on the golf course there.
I have a lot of time to polish the trophy right now, so yes.
I think we're all dying to know what these high stakes are, though. I mean, how much is Canadian whiskey? How much is American stakes? What are these high stakes?
We haven't gotten into the prize. That's a good idea.
I pay him in Canadian dollars. He pays me in American dollars.
So he wins every time.
He hit the first one, up 30 points right out of the gate. So anyway, the only other thing I was going to add, Rob, a little more seriously, and you use it or not, a bit of a well-kept secret. Golf in Canada is the #1 participation sport. Everybody thinks must be hockey.
Oh, that's great.
Curling. Come on, it's got to be curling.
Well, exactly. Our courses and our industry start from a position where we're punching above our weight a little bit. Small country, but 18, 19, 20% participation rate for golf, which is #1 in the entire world. I've got confidence. Everything else we discussed combined with that built-in demand is going to be there. I'm actually quite confident that this whole conversation is going to net out a little short-term dip for sure that we got to manage to, but it's going to net out in a good place. And really, just golf offers so much to society that a lot of others are going to have a hard time with, whether it's groups or whether it's physical, actual touch contact compared to a lot of other sports, for example. Concerts, theaters, restaurants, I mean, on the entertainment and sports sort of spaces, we are so well positioned, and healthy recreation, that society's already aimed in that direction. We're going to be one of the few places that you can accomplish all those things. And I'm very optimistic, if I didn't make that clear earlier, in the long run. We've got to grind a bit in the short term, but I'm quite optimistic.
Yeah, sure. And let me offer something to that. I agree with Jeff. I mean, it's certainly, we're the Chamber of Commerce for the golf industry to a certain degree. We want to be optimistic, but there are real things happening right now that make me very bullish about the future and what's happening with the demand increase that we're seeing right now, the new faces. Last time we saw a spike like this in interest was probably the Tiger Woods effect, where in that case we had a Pied Piper ushering these folks, these tire kickers and samplers, and they're doing it, at the time, maybe because, oh, it's cool, and look at this, I want to check it out, and what we saw, obviously, was that didn't sustain in the United States this level of play. We've been on this precipitous decline since then. So you can make the argument that people came to the game in the late 90s and, around there, and they didn't stick around, and they might have come there because of the Pied Piper effect. To a certain degree. Now we have people coming to golf for the very reasons golfers love golf. So I guess looking at it from the 30,000 foot level, I'm hopeful that the people that are discovering golf right now are doing it for the right reasons, which to me can only bode well for retention in the future. And so, cross our fingers, we don't squander this, and that we just do a fantastic job taking care of these people, making them feel welcome, and facilitating enjoyment.
Very good.
Amen.
Very good. Well, I'll leave it to my partner to kind of wrap this one up. Kyle, thanks for another great episode.
Great episode.
Gentlemen, Jeff and Jay, obviously, thanks very much.
Yeah, appreciate our partners from the north joining us. We need to do more of this, Rob. interesting to hear what's going on up there. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate all the insight and all the work both your organizations do for the business of golf. As always, thanks for listening to our listeners. If you want more information or need to listen to our archives or get more contact info, show notes, etc., come to the Golf Wire. And until next time.